Hello everyone, welcome back to another video tutorial from chapter 3 problems tutorial series of our BUS 325 investment course. In this video we're going to be looking at problem number 16, so let's read it together. It says old economy traders opened an account to short sell 1,000 shares of Internet Dreams from the previous question. The initial margin requirement, the IMR, was 50%. Okay, the margin account pays no interest. A year later, the price of Internet Dreams has risen from $40 to $50, and the stock has paid a dividend of $2 per share. So what's required here? First, A, what is the remaining margin in the account? Okay. All right, now for us to figure out the remaining margin in the account, we first need to figure out the initial margin, okay? So we'll start with the initial margin. The initial margin, which we can find all of the information we need to calculate it in the question. So here we have the number of shares, 1,000 shares, and then we have the initial margin requirements, 50%, okay, and then we have the stock price initially at the time of the short sale, which was $40. We'll ignore the $50, the $10 increase for now, okay. And to calculate the initial margin now, we need the share price, $40, multiplied by the number of shares, which is 1,000 shares, and the percentage, which is the initial margin requirement, the IMR, that says it's 50%. So that means the amount that the owner or the person who opened the account, Old Economy Traders, will be receiving half of the initial short sale proceeds, right? So we'll multiply that by 50%, which is 0.50. Okay. Run the numbers on a calculator. So 40 multiplied by 1,000 shares, so that's 40,000, multiplied by 50% or 0.5, that would be $20,000. Okay. Now that we know the initial margin, we can figure out the remaining margin, which will be the initial margin okay, minus the loss due to the price increase, okay, and minus the $2 dividend. So here we have a price increase from 40 to 50, and we have a $2 dividend per share that the trader is going to have to pay to the original owner of the shares, the either the person or the institution that he borrowed the 1,000 Internet Dreams shares from in order to short sell. Okay, he's gonna have to pay the dividend back to them, right? All right. So that means the remaining margin is going to equal the initial margin we calculated earlier. Sorry, small typo here, which is $20,000 minus how much did they lose due to the price increase? The price difference per share was $10, right? Remember, when you short sell a stock, you lose when the stock rises in price. Why? Because when you short sell a stock, you borrow the stock and then you sell it right away, and then you're going to have to buy it again at a later date. So if the price increases, that means when we sold it, we generated $40 per share in revenue. But when we need to cover to buy the share back, we're going to have to pay $50 per share. So that difference is our loss in the case of a short sale, right? So here, the difference is 50 minus 40, that's $10 multiplied by the number of shares. $10 multiplied by 1,000 shares. Okay, and for the dividends, it's $2 per share. So it's going to be $2 multiplied by 1,000 shares. Okay, so that is going to be 20,000 minus $10,000 minus $2,000. Okay, and that would be $8,000. All right, so that is the first requirement. The remaining margin in the account is $8,000. All right, let's go over to part B. It says, if the maintenance margin requirement is 30%, will Old Economy receive a margin call? So the maintenance margin requirement is 30%. And we need to determine if they're going to receive a margin call or not. How do we determine that? We need to first find the margin on short position. So B, let's write down the formula. Margin on short position is going to equal the remaining equity divided by the total value of the shares. Okay. The remaining equity in dollar amounts we have already calculated to be $8,000. So we'll just write that down. And the total value of shares is going to be how much? We can figure that out because it told us, the question told us that the price had increased from 40 to 50. And we know that the account contains 1,000 shares. So that's going to be 50 multiplied by 1,000. $50 per share multiplied by 1,000 shares. Okay, so that would equal 8,000 divided by 50,000. Move on to our calculator and run the numbers. 8,000 divided by 50,000. And that would be 0.16, which is equal to 16%. Now we need to answer the actual question. They told us that the MMR, okay, or the maintenance margin requirements is 30%. When do when should the trader get a margin call? When their margin on the short position drops below the 30%. And we just run the numbers and we figured out that the margin on the short position is 16%, which is less than 30% MMR. That means the trader, or let's write their name. We know their name, which is Old Economy, right? Old Economy traders. So Old Economy traders will get a margin call. And that would be the answer to part B. Now let's go back and see the last part, part C. It says, what is the rate of return on the investment? Okay, straightforward. The rate of return for the investment, part C. Let's write down the formula again. Rate of return is going to equal the ending equity minus initial equity divided by the initial equity. Okay. And we have these pieces of information already. We already know the ending equity, which is 8,000, right? And we know the initial equity, which was 20,000. So we'll just substitute in our formula. We'll say $8,000 minus $20,000, all divided by $20,000. Okay. Go to the calculator. 8,000 minus 20,000 divided by 20,000, and that would be a zero or negative 0.6, which is a decline of 60%. Okay, so the rate of return on this particular investment was a negative 60%, a loss of 60%. All right, that's it for this particular problem. This is how you solve a short selling margin account question, similar to problem number 16. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the comments. I'll try my best to answer any questions that you might have. And until I see you in the next problem tutorial, take care and keep on learning.